Hello, everyone, and welcome to East City Bookshop. My name is Emily Summer. I am the book buyer here at East City, and we are so glad that you are joining us tonight. We are especially glad if it's your first visit, and we hope that you will come back and see us again. We're also glad that people are joining us from home via Zoom. So if you're tuning in that way, we're delighted to have you with us as well. Before we get to tonight's conversation, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. There will be a time for audience questions at the end, so please hold your questions until then. And we're in a small enough space that we'll ask you to deliver your questions without a microphone, and then Courtney and Laura will repeat it into the microphone for the audience who's watching at home. That ensures that our Zoom audience will be up to speed. If you need a bathroom, it is upstairs past our cash register and greeting cards. And most importantly, if you still need a copy of Welcome Home Caroline Kline, or you need extra copies to give to friends, or one of Laura's books, those copies are also ready for you upstairs. And now for the reason that we're here. Courtney Preiss was born in Brooklyn and raised in New Jersey off the same Highway 9 Bruce Springsteen sings about in Born to Run. She graduated from Emerson College with a BFA in writing, literature, and publishing. She lives in Asbury Park, New Jersey, with her husband and their rescue dog, Barry. And Welcome Home Caroline Kline is her first novel. New Jersey and Asbury Park figure prominently in Welcome Home Caroline Kline. And although I am a Southerner with no real knowledge of New Jersey except for an abiding love of Bruce Springsteen, and although I have no knowledge or affinity toward softball, which is also a central feature of the book, I was completely riveted and charmed by this novel of coming home, starting over, and rediscovering oneself. I'm thrilled that Courtney is here with us today, and with her in conversation is a dear friend of East City Bookshop, Laura Hankin. Laura is our neighbor and a staff-wide favorite author. She's written Happy and You Know It, A Special Place for Women, and The Daydreams, which will be out in paperback in 2 weeks on May 7th. I also have to mention Laura's forthcoming novel, One Star Romance, which will come out in June. It might be even better than the others, and it is available for pre-order. Thank you, Courtney and Laura, and you can take it from here.
Thank you so much for that, Emily. I'm like starstruck by you. So that was a lot. I know. And she's so good at recommending them. I listened to her we were talking about a podcast that Emily is a frequent guest on. It has a swear in it, so I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. I'm from New Jersey, so I'm going to say it. It's called The Shit No One Tells You About Writing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that podcast. And Emily is frequently a guest and like makes book recommendations. And whenever she's on, I like have my pen out and I'm taking furious notes about all the books I need to read. So just thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Should we do this whole event just about Emily?
I think so.
Yeah. No, I think we should talk about your amazing book, which I told you, but just to share with everybody, I was reading it like around when I went into labor, and I I was like mad at myself that I forgot to bring it to the hospital. It's so good.
I like that's the most you were generous enough to blurb this book, and like I'm just eternally grateful to you. But I remember we were DMing. I think that you had DM'd me and you were like, in case I don't get you a blurb back in time for deadline, it's because I'm literally giving birth. And then like the day after you were like, finished it, loved it. And I'm just like, the fact that you were reading this like while this major life event was happening is an endorsement in itself. And so I was already extremely grateful that you took the time to read it, but just like doubly grateful for that whole situation. So thank you again.
Of course. And I'm glad that my blurb makes sense. I was like reading your pages and pages of blurbs that you have at the beginning of this book. And I was like, oh, wow. At least 4 of us made home run puns about this book.
I love it.
Because it is a home run. So, you know, I'm going to ask you probably like a question that you've never been asked before. So creative. What is the book about and what inspired it?
Okay. So Welcome Home Caroline Kline is about a woman whose life is falling apart in New York City. And she gets a call from her father, who has taken a really bad fall, that he needs her to come home to the Jersey Shore suburb where she grew up. And she thinks, oh my God, like he needs a caretaker. And she's really not in a position to refuse because, again, life is kind of spinning out of control. She comes home and he doesn't want her as a caretaker. He wants her to replace him on his psychotic all men's softball team and lead the team to World Series glory. Um, and there's like, so it's a family story and a little bit of a sports story, and there's a love story in there too. I think that like I know that there's I hope that there's some, a little bit of like crossover appeal for folks who like romance books or rom-coms, because there is a love story and it is funny. But I know that it's not a straight rom-com. I'm like, romance readers are the savviest readers on earth. They know exactly what they want. They know exactly when they want it to happen. And I'm like, I do not dare categorize my book as a rom-com, but I think there's something in there that they will like. I've been describing it as like a beach read with an edge, because it takes place in Asbury Park, which is where I now live. And it's a very singular kind of place. It's like a rock and roll beach town. And I could totally see the girlies bringing this to the beach at Asbury Park this summer.
Oh, yeah. People are going to just be like tripping over copies of this book on the beach.
From your mouth to God's ear.
Yeah. So what was like the spark of this idea for you?
Okay, so on my 30th birthday, I went home to the Jersey Shore suburb where I was raised to watch my father, who is in the audience tonight. Hi, Dad. Star, local celebrity, my dad. He's played in his local men's softball league for 30 years. And yeah, I went home on a Sunday morning. It was my 30th birthday. I went to go watch him, and I had this very surreal experience of watching his game with him, because he was sidelined with a minor injury, right? Nothing that we're like, nothing like what's going on in this book. He was sidelined with a minor injury. My brothers, one of whom is in the audience tonight, but he doesn't, I don't want to like call too much attention if you want attention, but hi. Both of my brothers, when they came of age, like started playing softball with him. My sister and I are very consummate baseball players, would you say? Yeah. She has an arm like a rocket, and I'm a gifted natural hitter, I'd say. So, and modest. So, we've had this kind of like long running joke where it's like, oh, like they get to play softball with you, but like we have to sit on the sidelines. And now I'm sitting here again, having this kind of like weird experience watching his game with him. I start making all my jokes as usual. Like, should we Mulan it? Like, I'll tuck my hair under the cap. Like, I know how to play third base. Like, let me get out there. And I don't know. I just thought that it just struck me then that that could be a cool concept for a novel. I'd never tried to write long form fiction before. I spent my 20s writing like comedic essays and more like personal stuff, like memoir stuff. So it was really my like first foray into long form fiction, was trying to write this novel. And I actually I'd lived in Brooklyn for a decade prior. And I moved to Asbury Park, which is maybe like a half hour away from where I grew up. I moved there like a month and a half after that softball game. And I don't know, like the part of my brain that was like occupied with survival when I lived in New York City was like, I'm free now. Like, let's use this to write a novel. And I did.
It is amazing how, like, I lived in New York for 10 years, and whenever I go back now, I'm like, I forgot about this constant level of extra stress.
Yes.
Yeah. But speaking of New Jersey, obviously this book is a love letter to New Jersey, but it's also Caroline being like, I can't believe I'm back in New Jersey. So I just would love if you would tell us, like, what is your favorite thing about New Jersey? And then what is your least favorite thing about New Jersey?
This is a great question. It's definitely like a backhanded love letter to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Because she gets there and she's like, oh my God, I cannot abide by this. Which, like, who can't relate? If you've been to New Jersey or if you live in New Jersey, you certainly relate. My favorite thing about New Jersey, oh my God. I love that my family lives there. Like I love that being there, like I'm close to my family. And that I'm not entirely sacrificing like a connection to New York City.
Your favorite thing about New Jersey is that it's close to New
That
York.
it's close to New York. I just thought that I was gonna like die in New York, like Joan Didion,
Yeah.
but less talented. And
But you
and
have
with
your comedic essays.
but my
Your
comedic
essays.
essays. Okay, sorry. Let's scratch that one. Okay. If you're watching at home, I didn't mean that. What do I love about New Jersey? Um, I really like, I just think that it's like underappreciated. Like, I think that like I grew up kind of like resenting Bruce Springsteen, even. Like, I was just like, we get it. You're sprung from cages on Highway 9. Like, who cares? Because it was just like so close. And then I think that like the second that I left, like I went to school in Boston. I lived in LA for a little while. I lived in New York City for a decade. And I think that just like when you're away from it, you can appreciate it more. And I'm like, no, like there's something so naturally beautiful about New Jersey. Like the fact that I don't know. I really love Asbury Park. I can just say that Asbury Park's my favorite part of Jersey and just wrap up this mess of an answer. My least favorite part about New Jersey is that I have to say that I live in New Jersey. And then like when you're it doesn't even need to be like abroad, but like when you're like somewhere, I certainly have traveled abroad and like people have asked, where are you from? And I always say New York. I grew up in Monmouth County in New Jersey, and like when we would go places, people would ask my parents, "Oh, but like where are you traveling from?" And they'd always say New York. And I'd be like the kid that's like, "We live in New Jersey, you guys." But I learned from them, so I'm just like New York. And my husband like at the same time is like Asbury Park, New Jersey. This is our address. And it's just like it's not as sexy. It doesn't have like the sex appeal of being like I'm from New York, like I'm a New Yorker. It's like it's a little hand wringing, like I'm from New Jersey. So that's the worst part. But I think that like anybody who's gonna judge it just like doesn't know the beauty. And if you're gonna judge it, you can come hang out with me in Asbury Park. I'll show you a really good time, and you'll come around on it.
There are many wonders of New Jersey. I was in a musical in college called A Turnpike Runs Through It that was all about New Jersey, the wonders of New Jersey.
Oh my God.
And I think the thing that I learned about New Jersey from that musical, my favorite thing about it is the bridge in Trenton that has Trenton makes the world takes on it.
So catty.
Yeah.
So bitchy.
It's just like, yeah. Everybody's always taking and taking from Trenton.
My sister went to school down there. She didn't go to Princeton. That's not like a cute like euphemism. Like my sister went to school near Trenton. She didn't go to Princeton. She went to TCNJ. And I'm just as bitchy as the bridge. And every time we drove past that bridge, I was like, I love this thing. Oh my God. It's great. I have a print of it in my home.
Really?
Yeah. I'll send you a link.
Okay, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
But you also in this book get at this really resonant idea of returning to your hometown after, trying to make it somewhere else and all the things that brings up. Like, am I a failure? Or are there many things to love here too? And is there a reason why like my parents raised me here? So I'd love to hear more your thoughts on that.
I love that. I was like, I think that you guys already know from my origin story that I shared about the book, like what I was going through when I started writing this novel, which is that I had left New York City and moved to the county where I grew up. So I was definitely like trying to work something out with myself while commuting on the New Jersey Transit every day. I'm like, it's just me and this document, baby. I will say that I think that like by way of writing this novel and just like by virtue of building a life in Asbury Park over the last few years, it's really made me appreciate like I had this very New York or nowhere mentality, which for what it's worth, totally admire and accept and respect in anyone else. Like I get it. Like I really never thought that I would leave New York. That book of essays that was like goodbye to all that came out I think the year that I moved to Brooklyn, and I was like absolutely fuck this. Like good. Go ahead and leave. There's more room for me on the subway then. so like I was very like averse to the idea of leaving. And now that um I have like such a deeper appreciation for the other places that I've gone, like specifically like smaller American cities, or like they don't even have to be smaller cities. They're just cities that aren't New York or LA. You know, I spent a lot of time in the Midwest last summer for different like work travel. I had a friend who did a gallery opening in Dubuque, Iowa. Iowa, favorite state in the nation, obsessed with Iowa. But like, I just feel like I wouldn't have had, and I'm like, oh my God, I love the Midwest. Like, am I moving to Detroit? I could be. And I just I have like such a deep appreciation, like everywhere I go for like the local culture and the folks that live there. And I don't know, like I feel like that is only possible because of this sort of recent years acclimation to New Jersey and like being able to appreciate this place that I'm like, I get it. Like New Jersey is not sexy. So, but like I love it now. And so I feel like because I love New Jersey, like I could love anywhere. It's like it's changed the way that I look at the world.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. I low key feel like I'm gonna get kicked out of my own event with these answers. I'm sorry, Emily.
But let's talk about Caroline, the titular Caroline.
Yes.
You know, I think you do such a wonderful job of writing a character who is going through some real shit. I can swear too.
I'm also from New
one
Jersey, so
rule,
we
but-
call it cursing, not swearing.
Oh,
Like even
what?
swearing sounds too pinky up to me. So
Oh my gosh. um, well, but she's, you know, going through things and she makes mistakes, but at the same time, she remains so lovable, and my sympathy like was with her 100% throughout the book. And I would love to hear about how you like walk that line of, you know, flawed but lovable, because it's hard to strike that balance.
I'm very flattered that you think I struck that balance because I think that there's a bunch of folks on Goodreads who would disagree with you.
Oh my god!
Like there's nothing more
You gotta
deeply
stay away.
there's nothing more deeply uncool than reading your own reviews. I at first like didn't read them on purpose. I didn't know that NetGalley had reviews.
Mm.
And I got a bunch of DMs that were like, you're up on NetGalley now. And I wanted to see what the user experience was like. And the user experience was like 1 star, so vulgar, so unlikable. And I'm like, you know, I'll like talk to my friends about that. And they'll be like, these people have never like laughed at an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like, why do you care what they think?
I also feel like that first 1 star review of your first book is just going to be like burned in your brain forever.
I love it. I posted a picture of it
Yeah.
on Instagram the night on Book Eve because it was just like joyful to me, honestly. I'm like the fact that I wanted to love this book. I can memorize. I memorized it.
Yeah.
I wanted to love this book because I love the Jersey Shore, but it was immediately too vulgar.
Honestly,
And I
that
had
is
to put it down.
that is oh my god. Yeah.
I'm like, where on the Jersey? Clearly, they're from Ocean Grove. If you know, you know. But I'm just like, where from the Jersey Shore are you from?
Yeah.
That like page 1 is too vulgar for you. Like,
also, that is actually the best kind of 1 star review to get because then you can convince yourself that any other 1 star review you get is somebody who put it down on page 1 because they don't like the word book.
correct.
You know. Yeah. That is the only complaint possible. Yeah.
I agree. Sorry. Let's go back to what you actually asked me, which is writing a complicated character. I think that I tried to write somebody who I'm compelled by, and I'm not compelled by somebody who is like necessarily shiny, happy, tied up with a bow, like has it all figured out, is like moving through flawlessly. I just like, I don't think that I ever read books that are like that. And that's why honestly, I get a little confused. Like when we're having conversations about books or television where people are like, female protagonist is so unlikable. And I'm just like, like, what do you want to see exactly? Like, where's the plot? But yeah, I feel very compelled by characters who are moving messily in tandem with me. And like, again, I wrote this book when I, you know, had first moved back to New Jersey and was kind of like trying to figure my own stuff out, untether my identity from living in New York, and was feeling like messy about it. So I wanted like a messy person to relate to. I also I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I love listening to like author interview podcasts. I was listening to a lot of podcasts while I was writing the first draft of this, and I heard a couple. One was with Erin Somers, who wrote Stay Up with Hugo Best. Love that book. She just sold her second book. I'm dying to read it. And one was with Lynn Staker Strong, and it was publicity for the book Want. And they had both like said sort of like the same thing that I really took with me and feel like I put into like building out Caroline, where they were like, I wanted to give my character like the shape of the container of like my life, but like have her not be me, but like I wanted to like give her like I wanted to make her container like a similar shape so that I could step into the book and like inhabit her. She has the same set of references as me. She has the same like set of knowledge as me. And then like sort of like tweak her personality so that she's not exactly me. So I gave Caroline for sure some of my messiness, but she has a whole lot of messiness that is also like nothing to do with me. She's such a snob. I'm like, I don't talk like this. Like I don't dress like this. So I've played around with that too. I feel like there's like an element to her that has a lot of humanity to her, because like I tried to put pieces of myself and like other people who I know and like other characters who I love into building her out. But then I, of course, threw some messy stuff in there too to like keep it compelling, keep us hooked.
It is always so funny when you have a character who outwardly bears some similarities to you, but then does things that you have never done. But then, people who know you read the book and are like, oh, was that you who did that thing in the bathroom with the bartender?
Oh my God. My family is here. So it's literally, but it's everything.
Yeah.
I should tell this story. This is like, sorry, this is not a direct answer to the question. I'll tell the story because my parents are here. I wrote this book. I finished writing this during like deep lockdown. So like 2020, I was still drafting this, and my family knew that I was like, hiding away in my apartment writing this book. And they invited us over for like a dinner in the distance. Like we're all sitting 10 feet apart from each other. And they were like, when you come over, we want to like, can you like read us a piece of the book? And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, absolutely not. Like, it's not done yet. It's a first draft. Like, I don't want. And then I came around on it and I was like, I will print out copies and I will let my sister do a dramatic reading so that I can kind of like hear how it's sounding. So I go over and I hand out copies of a chapter to everybody. It was the Drugs in the Desert chapter, for those who have read. If you know, you know. I hand that out to everybody. And as I'm handing it out, I'm like, just so you know, this is a work of fiction. I am not Caroline Kline. The love interest is not my husband. You guys are not the parents. I'm like, Stephanie is not Claudia. My dad is not Leo. And my dad comes out of the house with like a tray of drinks and he's like, okay, what did I miss? And my stepmother goes, sit down, you're Leo. So I can't win, I guess is the point of that. But yeah, I have to hope that, and I'm sure that like you experienced this when you debuted as well, where it's like at first it's like the only people who are going to read this are people who know me, and then like God willing the world opens up a bit and like the people who know you are like a vast minority of the folks who are reading the book. Like your readership will go far beyond the bounds of people who you know. But yeah, there's definitely stuff in here that I'm just like, do the people who know me like think that some of this like they know that like they see a seed of truth, and then do they assume that the rest of it is true? And I think that sometimes it's a little bit like, oh God, they think that they're seeing me naked, but they're really just seeing me in my swimsuit.
Right. It's very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like you need a special little author's note that you give out to anybody who knows you, who reads the book.
I told my husband, I'm just like, I'm giving you the distinct privilege. Anything that you want to know in this book, any question you have for me about whether or not something is real, I'm giving you this singular privilege. No, I'm not giving this to anyone else. And he like hasn't asked me any like crazy questions yet.
Wow. Well, he knows
It might
that with
come up.
great power
I
comes
know.
great responsibility.
Like maybe he's like afraid. He's like, actually, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
It's fiction. Yeah.
Well, to talk about something that you have some experience with in real life, the baseball slash softball of it all. I love that you said Mulan, but make a baseball, because I wrote down that quote from the book to bring that up, but you beat me to it. So I think that there are obviously plenty of books and TV shows and movies about all sorts of sports. I'm saying this, I don't know anything about any sport. But I do feel like books and movies and TV shows about baseball hold like a special place in the cultural imagination. League of Their Own, Bull Durham, Angels in the Outfield. So, what about softball really struck you as wanting to write about it?
I feel like I just always knew that like my first book would have to have something to do with baseball because I grew up in such a crazy baseball house. My father plays baseball. Me and all of my siblings play baseball or played baseball growing up. And we were all huge Yankees fans, which I know is like passe or like, oh my God, what are you doing here? Sorry. One of my friends is here and she literally lives in North Carolina. How did you even get here? We'll talk after. We'll talk offline. Sorry to the folks on the live feed. Yankees. So passe, so evil empire. You love the Yankees. How original. But I do have to say that when we were kids, the Yankees had not won a World Series in, I don't even know, what was it, 78? 78 to 96. So that was like a very exciting time for us. And then we went on like this great winning streak where I got too cocky. My dad wanted to take me to the World Series parade in 1998. And I was like, I have a math test today. I'll just go with you next year.
Did you curse the Yankees?
And he was like, well, no, because we did win the next year. That's the thing. That's the thing about greatness.
See, I don't know anything.
We went
about
back the next
baseball.
2 years. So I'm
like,
blessed.
the Yankees have never won again.
I blessed the Yankees. I don't know what happened to us in 2009. I might have cursed them then. Actually, my dad threatened me to like, he's not going to pay my tuition. I went to school in Boston. He's like, I'm going to cut off your tuition if you ever go to Fenway Park. And I went to Fenway Park in 2010, and we actually haven't won since 2009. You can't cut off my tuition now. He is going to cut me from the will, though. So baseball, back to baseball. I think that like, because I grew up in the environment that I grew up in, and like, I actually had this conversation at one of my other events, like talking about like faith and baseball, and like there's like a Judaism aspect in the book, and like how they like play with each other. And I'm just like, I grew up in an interfaith household. My father is Jewish, my mother's Catholic, and I've always identified as Jewish. But I think what's so funny is that like the real like the like top religion in the house, I guess, so to speak. I feel like that's probably offensive. Was baseball. Like that was like the big higher power that we all looked to. So there's like a part of me that just always knew that my first book would be about that. I love books that are about baseball. I love movies that are about baseball. Like A League of Their Own is everything to me.
Yes.
And like we haven't had another like women in baseball sort of like a big zeitgeisty moment since then, except for the show,
which was so good,
and they canceled it.
I know.
So
this is filling the void.
Let's get this adapted, you guys. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I do have a would you rather for you.
Love.
Going off of the baseball. Would you rather play on Caroline's father's softball team or star in her mother's gender swapped production of Guys and Dolls? Dolls and Guys.
Okay. This is the first question that I've fielded about dolls and guys, and I just have to say thank you because it's my favorite part of the book. Um, okay. I hate doing things that I'm not already good at.
Okay.
So I would probably play on Leo's team because as much as I wish I could, I'm like a triple threat. Can't sing, can't act, can't dance. I love Guys and Dolls. It's one of my favorites. I actually was casting Guys and Dolls in the 7th grade play.
As who?
Police officer number 2.
Nice.
And I had never heard the phrase, there are no small parts, only small people before. So I just stopped going. I was like, how dare they?
I should have been Miss Adelaide and Sarah Brown.
I literally, yes, I should have been both roles. No, I feel like I could have been a good like female Benny South Street even.
Yeah.
Like I heard like an old recording where they had a woman doing Benny South Street and I was like, I could do that. Not well, but I could.
Like, maybe you don't hit the notes, but you have the attitude.
I'm nowhere near the notes, but like I'm having more fun than anyone else on stage. Yeah.
And that's what matters.
Correct.
Well, how are we doing on time here?
Let me check the old Fitbit that I
Yes.
forgot to take off. So glamorous. It's 7:34.
Great. So we have time for like one more question before we open it up to the audience. Okay.
Okay.
So this is your debut novel, and I would love to hear about what the debut experience has been like for you, this publication process, any big surprises, just talk about that.
It's really been a dream come true. And I think that I mean like the fact that my debut was published by Putnam, which I feel like it's like weird to stan an imprint, but I'm obsessed with Putnam. I actually like wrote down on a piece of paper when I started writing this book, I'm like, you are going to sell this novel to Putnam. And I did. And I like to freak my agent and my editor out by showing them that piece of paper.
That is
Like
amazing.
what shall the girlies manifest next? So that part has like quite literally been a dream come true. I feel very overwhelmed. I don't know. Like I've been on tour, which I'm so grateful that I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's unusual for a debut author to get to go on tour. And I've been so grateful to be able to do that. And I feel like there's a part of my brain that's just like not fully processing what's going on because like if I like stop and I like let it all in, I'd be crying all the time. Like I would just be like so moved. I've been moved to tears like several times on this tour, but I'm just like, I think that like once this whole piece of it is over and I get to like sit and reflect, like it's just going to be a lot. I feel very like overwhelmed in the moment, but just very happy and grateful. Yeah.
Good. I can't wait for the come down like
God,
a week
same.
from now where all the emotions hit you.
I know. I'm going to DM you and be like, it's happening.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I understand.
I know you know.
Well, should we open it up to audience questions? Anybody got anything?
Oh my God, great question. So the question for the folks watching at home is favorite Springsteen song and favorite Springsteen album. My favorite Springsteen song changes a bit. My favorite Springsteen song right now is the live cover of Jersey Girl that he does on that, like, I think it's a quadruple live album from, I want to say 82. That sounds like, it sounds rarer than I'm making it. It sounds rarer. I'm making it sound rarer than it actually is. Like a lot of folks, I've been so grateful that a lot of folks have been sharing photos of the book on Instagram, like on their stories and like putting a Springsteen song like on it. And a lot of them have been putting Jersey Girl on it. When Jersey Girl plays, I just get like very emotional. It's a cover of a Tom Waits song. And I don't know. So that's my favorite right now. And then in tandem with that quadruple live album, which I have on vinyl, I think was yours. I'm sorry, I stole it. I listened to it a lot. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. The mention of Jersey Girl was just, since I know you as a nonfiction writer and memoir, that was the last thing my grandmother said to me before like the last time I saw her before she passed away. She hugged me and called me a Jersey Girl because I'm from Camden, and so.
Oh my God.
So back to my very professional question about writing. I know you as a nonfiction writer. What was in terms of craft, the difference between the essays that you were writing before and writing a novel? Obviously, some things are true and some things are not, as that is the nature of fiction and nonfiction. But beyond that, what did you find were the biggest craft differences you had to tackle?
I think figuring out like act structure and pacing was unusual. Like it's not unusual, obviously, in like crafting fiction or general storytelling, but I think that I needed to approach that completely differently than I was writing nonfiction. I'm an outliner, which I think that there's like a big sort of like when people are fiction writers, they talk about like plotting versus pantsing, which is pantsing is like flying by the seat of your pants. I never thought about that before writing nonfiction, right? So, which I guess was all kind of by the seat of my pants. But this is like, I had to like outline, I had to think about act structure, I had to think about like when certain things had to happen. I had to go back and edit in a different way. It was like flexing a completely different muscle. But I mean, because I'm a nonfiction writer, I had a lot of fun with the fact that like not everything had to be true. Like I was just like, oh, what a relief. Like that was like the pleasant surprise part. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I've heard some fiction writers say that they go into writing a book with an idea of the story, but that their characters sort of bring them along. They don't actually know the outcome of the story. Was that the case with Caroline?
I'm just going to repeat the question. So, some fiction writers go into the story knowing what's going to happen, but then sometimes the character kind of carries them along and reveals to them what's going to happen. And was that the case with Caroline? I feel like yes. Like I always thought that that sounded so ridiculous, honestly, when people talk about it. It's like my character like told me that they were this, and I'm like, did they? Oh, did they? But I do think that like the longer you and this goes back to honestly like the plotting versus pantsing thing, because I think that people who are like, I don't like to outline, like I like to just let things happen. I'm like, even if you outline, things are still going to just happen. Like things are still going to make themselves known to you and like surprise you and reveal themselves to you on the page. So I do feel like there was, quite a good deal of stuff that happened like unfolded in real time that I was like, oh, I didn't know it was going to go like that, but it really did. And so now I try to like not make a face when I hear writers be like, my character told me this about themselves. I'm like, yeah, they did. The question was if I'm working on another project and how that experience has been different than this book. I am, Laura and I were talking about this backstage. I am working on a second project. I was lucky enough to sell this to Putnam in a 2-book deal. So I am working on a second book. It is unrelated to this book. So it's not a sequel in any way and it doesn't feature the same characters. Um, it's been a very different process. And if I'm being candid, it's because my editor actually left the imprint. And so I have a new editor. So I feel like I hear a lot of authors talk about trying to figure out book 2 because book 1 in so many ways feels like the book that they've been writing their whole lives and like everything's been leading up to this. And then book 2 is like, we liked that. Like, what else do you have? I've had a concept for a really long time that I am like currently in the middle of reworking and still getting the draft down. And it's been a very different process. Um, I think that a fun part of the process and like something that is different for this one that I did not use for Caroline, I found out what beat sheets are. You heard of those? Yeah, like Save the Cat writes a novel. So like I started using that. I like used that as like a sort of like math formula to kind of like check my work, so to speak, in helping me outline. And that's a difference between the first book and the second book that I feel like has been a good positive development. And I'm glad that I have that tool in my arsenal now.
It's always fun. You get to give yourself a little pat on the back when you're like, yes, and now the bad guys close in, as
Oh
the
my
beat
God.
says.
I know. I'm like, now it's the Dark Night of the Soul, which I'm like, that has to be the best part. I mean, like, it's not the best part. It's the Dark Night of the Soul, but like, it's the coolest title of any of the sections for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um,
My favorite baseball related books. For fiction, I really love Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella, which is the novel that Field of Dreams is based off of. I took a novel into film class in college, and I like did my final project on the differences and the similarities between the book and the film. And I just feel like it's an unbelievable adaptation. Like, I love that film so much. And the book is very different, but the book is amazing. Like, it's some of the most beautiful writing about baseball ever, in my opinion. W.P. Kinsella loved baseball. So many of his books involved baseball, and that passion really shows in how beautiful the language is. As far as nonfiction, I love the book Wait Till Next Year by Doris Kearns Goodwin, which was a memoir that she wrote. I want to say it came out in like 1997 or 98. And my dad read it to me when I was a kid, and I've revisited it many times since. It's about a young girl's coming of age in Rockville Center, so just outside New York City in the 1950s. She is obsessed with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and they keep losing to the Yankees. And then in 1955, they win the World Series against the Yankees. And then in 1957, they move to Los Angeles and break her heart. So all this is happening against this backdrop of like a lot of, obviously, like a culturally unusual time. When is it not a culturally unusual time? And a lot of like turmoil in her family. And I don't know, there's just a chapter in there about when the Dodgers lost to the Giants, that I'm like crying thinking about it. Every single time I read it, I cry. And there's no crying in baseball, but she just does such a beautiful job writing about it. It's a very famous game. It's like the shot heard around the world. And the way that she writes it from a little girl's perspective just moves me to tears every time. Highly recommend. And she just had a new memoir come out on the 16th, same birthday as Caroline Kline, me and Doris Kearns Goodwin in a league of our own. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe that my book is coming out the same day as Courtney Preiss' debut.
She's so lucky.
She is shaking right now. Dad. I'm like, oh God. Okay. So my dad just asked, when they make this movie, who is being cast as Caroline, Leo, and Claudia? And he doesn't want me to say the three of us.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, I would love if a Jewish actress was cast as Caroline. I don't want to like Mrs. Maisel it up, as fun as that was. I don't know. Actually, when I wrote this, and she's definitely not Jewish, so here we go. When I wrote this, and she's like since aged out of the role, I was like, I could see like a Brie Larson. Oh, you know who I like? Hannah Einbinder. She's the star of Hacks, and she is Jewish. And she's like the right age for this. So I'm gonna say Hannah Einbinder. Leo, I don't know who to cast. Leo in my head is not you, believe it or not. He's like Judd Hirsch. Really? Oh my God, right? He has such Judd Hirsch vibes. But also the dad, you guys don't know what I'm talking about. The dad in Clueless.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, if only I could go back to 1995 and cast whoever the hell that was. And Claudia, Marissa Tomei.
Oh.
Oh, she's happy now. Somebody's getting a Dyson for Hanukkah, and it's me. Oh, Marissa Tomei. Oh.
Well, this has been a very successful event. You're getting a Dyson.
Thanks, guys. Emily's like, you're not coming back for book 2, so enjoy this.
Do we have time for
Anyone
one
else before they
more?
escort me out?
Well, I can have one if nobody else does. Yeah. Okay. So you were saying like the next book is not going to be a sequel, and it's not about anybody in this world. But then I was like, wait, but if you were going to write a book about anybody in this world and tell their story, who would be the star of the next one?
Such a good question. I think that it would be either Winnie or Serene. Those are like my 2 favorite characters, and this is very surreal. I've gotten some DMs from readers who have been like, I need to read a whole book about Winnie.
Oh.
So Winnie is the best friend character, and she is like an amalgam of a bunch of my friends and like a little bit of me. And she offers some like much needed comedic relief. And I'm not going to spoil it. She has like a trajectory, like a little arc through the book. So I'd love to see what becomes of her on her next adventure. And I love Serene Jackson because, I'd love to read like a Daisy Jones and the Six-esque book about Serene Jackson, sober musician from Asbury Park, New Jersey, traversing North America on her big tour. Yeah.
I would read that too.
Yes.
Thank you. Wow.
My least favorite part of any event is when I have to come up and cut off the conversation. So Laura and Courtney, thank you so much. That was delightful. We always want audience and family interaction. It makes for a much better event. As I said at the beginning, we will have time for a signing. If you will just bear with us for a couple of minutes, we're going to move the chairs, move out a table. If you could help us by folding up your chairs and stacking them against the wall, we will help you with that too. And we'll sign, Courtney will sign the books in just a little bit. So thank you all for coming. Most of all, thank you, Laura. And thank you, Courtney. If you haven't gotten your copy, more upstairs.